FM 99 for all the businessmen and women. Move out of the darkness, follow the light. Come sell your business with us today. Home Digital FM, let your customers know what you're offering. Be on top of your competitors. Home Digital FM, we will help you stand out. Come advertise with us today for all your businesses. We offer live program coverage both on Facebook Live and on the radio. Exos to sell your products and services. The media is in control. Tell your customers when, where, and how to meet you through Home Digital FM. Don't worry. Do your business. We will sell you out. Call us today on 734-3125 or 200-5770 620-1413 766-8394. Home Digital FM. Follow the light.
Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of your Week in Review program, Africa This Week, looking at the continent's top stories over the last 7 days. Coming up in this edition, the U.S. State Department authorized the departure of known emergency U.S. government employees and their families from Nigeria, while other Western embassies warned their citizens to limit travel to the country over what they said was an increasing threat of terrorist attacks in especially Abuja. But Nigeria's security forces called for calm and said all necessary precautions have been taken. As Ghana's economic crisis continued, a majority of ruling party parliamentarians gave ultimatum to President Akufo-Addo to either sack his finance minister and his deputy, or they would boycott all government businesses in the parliament.
Until such persons as aforementioned are made to resign or removed from office, we, members of the majority caucus here in Parliament, will not participate in any business of government by or for the president by any other minister.
Human rights and civil society groups urge the Gambian government to speed up implementation of the TRRC recommendations.
I believe that we have now reached a stage where the fog of uncertainty around the implementation of the TRRC recommendations must be lifted, and doubt, which kills more dreams than failure ever will, is also lifted from the incredulous minds.
In Guinea, a former ADC of ex-military ruler Captain Musa Dadis Camara told a court in Conakry that it was Camara who planned and ordered the 2009 stadium massacre of more than 150 people in the capital. France called on African countries to show solidarity with Europe in the face of Russia's war in Ukraine. But in response, President Macky Sall of Senegal said colonialism had ended, arguing that many Africans felt their own security, economic or health problems were being ignored. Elsewhere on the continent, Malawi's president fired his agriculture minister and deputy for alleged incompetence and gross negligence.
I publicly instructed officials from the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that all arrangements for the distribution of fertilizer under this year's Affordable Inputs Program were in place no later than September. They have failed to do this, and it is a failure I consider to be completely unacceptable.
Former South African President Jacob Zuma took swipe at his successor Cyril Ramaphosa, accusing him of corruption and treason over probe that Ramaphosa had concealed from the police and the tax authorities a 2020 burglary at one of his properties, during which large sums of money were found hidden in furniture. Also coming up, our special guest, one of Africa's most successful and decorated investigative journalists, on why he uses sophisticated face mask to conceal his identity.
I cover my face when I'm suspicious of the environment that I'm in. People are likely to take my pictures. Sometimes I don't cover my face. I just walk. But wherever I walk and I don't cover my face, it only means that nobody knows me there. or nobody's likely to detect that it's me.
These and more on today's program. Stay with us.
Africa This Week, coming to you from Home Digital 99.9 FM in the heart of Brikama.
Sheriff BOJANG Jr.
Thanks for joining us. We start from our own backyard, the Gambia. The National Human Rights Commission and Open Society Foundation over the week held a joint forum to push for acceleration of implementation of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission recommendations. The government released its white paper in May, accepting 95% of the TRRC recommendations, including high-profile prosecutions, but implementations have so far not been put in place. Among the speakers at the Banjul Forum were Emmanuel Juf, the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, and Jagan Gray Johnson of the Open Society Foundation, OSF. First, Emmanuel.
While the government takes steps to implement the white paper, the National Human Rights Commission is therefore positioning itself to monitor implementation of the TRRC recommendations in order to ensure that never again in the history of the Gambia will such human rights violation and abuses occur. So to this end, the National Human Rights Commission will establish a monitoring framework to systematically keep track of implementation, progress, and lessons learned. It will also produce advisory notes, scorecards, and quarterly reports to document the process.
As the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission has stated, I believe that we have now reached a stage where the fog of uncertainty around the implementation of the TRRC recommendations must be lifted, and doubt, which kills more dreams than failure ever will, is also lifted from the incredulous minds as to answering the questions around the quest for justice for the victims of a tyrannical era which witnessed brutality and rights abuses under the Hjome regime. It is this fog of uncertainty and doubt that must be lifted through implementation instead of intentions. And also, it is this fog of uncertainty that must be lifted through actions and not acclamation of promises made yet to be kept.
Jagan Gray Johnson of the Open Society Foundation, OSF. First, you heard from Emmanuel Juf, the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia. The Gambia's Minister of Trade, Regional Integration and Employment has urged West African stakeholders to mobilize efforts and ideas to resist military coups in the region. According to the Standard newspaper, Babukar Usmaila Juf made the call in Banjul during a 3-day meeting on unconstitutional changes of government and constitutional transitions in West Africa. West Africa, once a military coup belt zone, had a brief moment of life without coup and was hailed as a model of democratic progress. But then came BAM, the coup in Mali, followed by coups in Burkina Faso and Guinea. So what triggered the reversal of the brief democratic gains and propelled the army to return to the old ways of taking arms against democratically elected governments? Dr. Ibrahima Khan is a Senegalese lawyer, civil society veteran, and head of African Union Advocacy Program at the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA.
We can explain it by one, lack of good management of the states. The fact that state didn't perform on many things, good governance, organizing election, doing the proper work that state was supposed to do. And then you had different actors in the state that really start organized coup. There is also the division in our security forces. In a country like Burkina Faso, which is the leader in coup in West Africa, many of the coups are related to the division within the army. And I think the last point that I can make is the fact that our state, the way they are structured, the way they perform at the moment, have all the elements that will really push for the apparition, the occurrence of coup in West Africa. Only one country since 1960 of the 15 ECOWAS countries didn't have a coup. Senegal. It tells you about the problem, the magnitude of the problem.
And talking about Senegal, President Macky Sall has been flirting with the idea of a third-term bid that experts say is illegal, though he hasn't yet a lot of energy and citizen participation to complete was rejected by President Adama Barrow's lawmakers and inner circle. How risky are such moves against democracy or anything in the sub-region?
It is totally against democracy. And I think what we are experiencing in the region is having a generation of leaders who believe that they are the only one who can really run the country, and they are the only one who have the authority, the right to run those countries.
ECOWAS is always quiet or less outspoken when leaders are violating their nation's constitutions and restricting political rights and civil liberties. But whenever there is military coup in a country, the institution ECOWAS sanction them and their countries and talk tough to push for a return to civilian rule. Dr. Ken, as far as you are concerned, is ECOWAS fit for purpose?
Truly, yes. ECOWAS is an institution that is well equipped to deal with all these kind of situations. If you look at the normative framework that ECOWAS have, none of the region, even the AU, doesn't have it. But the problem with ECOWAS is the lack of leadership. Leadership at the level of ECOWAS Commission, leadership at the level of head of states. In the past, ECOWAS used to be stronger enough, used to be bold enough to ensure the full implementation of its decision, of its normative framework. That kind of leadership is lacking. The ECOWAS Commission too, when you read the normative framework, you are really surprised because the Commission have all the legal elements, all the legal powers, to take some of those countries who are violating their own constitution to continue to have third term, because they have legal power to take them to task and to take them to ECOWAS court or to the head of state. But again, the Commission is composed of civil servants who are very loyal to the people who send them to Abuja, and that's explained why they are not really performing.
Dr. Ibrahima Khan, a civil society veteran and head of the African Union Advocacy Program at the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA. The U.S. State Department on Tuesday authorized the departure of non-emergency U.S. government employees and their families from Nigeria due to a reported heightened risk of terrorist attacks in the country. It followed an advice on Monday by the U.S. and other Western embassies that their citizens limited travel to Nigeria because of what they said was an increased threat of terrorist attacks. It wasn't clear whether the advice was based on a new security threat or came after recent incidents. Fighters linked to the Islamic State group have claimed responsibility for several attacks in states near Abuja in the past 6 months. On Sunday, the U.S. Embassy issued a note warning its citizens of a high risk of terrorist attacks in Nigeria, particularly in Abuja, but did not give details. Britain, Canada, and Australia have also issued similar warnings, advising their citizens in Nigeria, particularly in Abuja, to avoid crowded areas. Following these multiple Western warnings, Nigeria's Department of State Services, DSS, gave assurance that all necessary precautions have been taken. A spokesman from the department said similar warnings had already been issued and he called for calm. As part of measures to forestall terror attacks, the Inspector General of Police has directed the commencement of a counter-terrorism incident simulation exercise codenamed Operation Dakin Gagawa. Despite the state of fear in Abuja, the presidential campaigns have been in high gear in Nigeria ahead of next year's election. The campaign of presidential candidate of the ruling All Progressives Congress, or APC, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Friday unveiled a 422-man committee comprising political heavyweights and prominent personalities to pilot the various subcommittees of the campaign council. He officially launched the committee and unveiled his manifesto at the presidential villa in Abuja.
It is my honor at this defining moment in our nation's history to introduce my roadmap to the future we all demand. The doors to the security, prosperity, and greatness are open to us. We must step through the portals, guided by a torchbearer with the experience and mentor to shoulder the task ahead. Nothing short of this will suffice. I seek to become the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria because I know the way. My experience and the past performance assured that it will be through collective effort and national endeavor that we join hands, cross divides, and achieve our vision.
That was Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, presidential candidate of Nigeria's ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, unveiling his manifesto at the presidential villa in Abuja. Still on the Nigerian campaign trail, Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the main opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP, has pledged to create state police to address Nigeria's chronic insecurity if elected president. Atiku, who had served as vice president during the presidency of Olusegun Obasanjo, made the pledge at a PDP rally in the city of Benin in Nigeria's southern part.
We are going to give each and every part of this country a sense of belonging. We promise to restore security. Whatever it is going to take us to do, we shall restore the security in this country so that you can travel day and night, so that you can go to your farms, so that you can go to anywhere secured. By that, what we mean is that we will put more policemen on the streets.
Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of Nigeria's main opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP. He was speaking at a campaign rally in the city of Benin in southern Nigeria. Nigeria's 2023 elections take place against a backdrop of complex economic, political, and security challenges. So what implications will the outcome of the polls have on the country and the citizenry? Dr. Eman Usman Sehu is a Nigerian political analyst and director of International Institute of Journalism in Abuja. He joined me on the line from the Nigerian capital.
It seems when we come into any major election, there seems to be quite a lot of things building up to the election, because you remember that in 2015 we had the issue of security, and then 2019 the same issues of security, but I think it's worsened now by the economic downturn, which is global, incidentally. But all these factors cannot be overlooked, and of course, they also make the election very important, because the hope is that by the time we have elections in February of 2023, the incoming administration would have been able to outline exactly how it intends to overcome most of these major challenges. So in that sense, I think there's a lot of expectation going towards the elections.
And most attention have always been on candidates from the ruling APC and main opposition PDP, of course, given their dominance of the political space. But it seems this time around there is a third force, Peter Obi of Labour Party. He has been firing the young people up, at least on the social media. What's the situation on the ground? Is this supposed to be, or do we expect this one, next year's election, to be a three-horse race?
Ideally, that is what it should be, given the size of the country and the fact that these dominant parties, some people are disenchanted with the fact that it's these two parties that have dominated the political space, made up of people who have been crisscrossing from both parties anyway. So that is part of the disenchantment. So it's as if there is nothing new for them to offer. Unfortunately, the reality on ground is totally different from what is being projected on social media. And this is down to the demographics. A lot of the younger people are on social media, and that demography does not really translate to reality on the ground, because these are, if you like, a set of literate people, and they do not quite represent that kind of force of social media. So that is the major challenge that the party is going to have, Labour Party is going to have. And unfortunately, Labour Party is not a party that has institutionalized itself over the years. It's always been one of those, what we like to call the briefcase parties that are always there for disenchanted politicians to pick up and use to make a political point. All the so-called talk of organic movement. No, this is a fallout of the NSAS movement.
In Nigeria, like many other parts of the continent, many voters choose political patronage to competence of candidates. What are some of the core issues that you think and feel are going to decide the outcome of this election? Or is it just going to be the same old political patronage, the godfatherism and all those?
Well, we cannot rule out godfatherism in politics in Nigeria and in most of African countries. In Africa or in the developing countries, the godfathers have the clout because they have the financial means to sponsor candidates or to oil the wheels of the political vehicles. And so that cannot be ruled out. However, it's becoming clear, even to the godfathers, that people are becoming more demanding, people are becoming more aware, and therefore issues have to be addressed, whether the political godfathers like it or not. So I think more than ever in this election, we are going to see the emergence of issues like the economy, like security. These are going to be two major issues that will play a prominent role in this election.
Dr. Sehu, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sharif.
That was Dr. Eman Usman Sehu, a Nigerian political analyst and director of International Institute of Journalism in Abuja. Now to Ghana, where a majority of ruling party parliamentarians Tuesday gave an ultimatum to their party leader and President Nana Akufo-Addo to sack his finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta and his deputy over economic crimes, or they would boycott all government businesses in the parliament. Ofori-Atta, a former banker before being named Ghana's finance minister in 2016, had repeatedly pledged not to seek IMF assistance before finally engaging the fund in July. Now pressures have been mounting for him to step down or be sacked. In a statement on behalf of 80 of the 137 ruling National Patriotic Party lawmakers, MP Andy Apia Kubi said Ofori-Atta and his deputy must go in order to restore hope in the financial sector.
We have made our grave concern to the President through the parliamentary leadership and the leadership of the party without any positive response. We are by this medium communicating our strong desire that the President change the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State in the Finance Ministry without further delay in order to restore hope into the financial sector and reverse the downward trend in the growth of the economy. And notice is hereby served that until such persons as aforementioned are made to resign or removed from office, we, members of the majority caucus here in Parliament, will not participate in any business of government by or for the President, by any other minister. If our request is not responded to positively, we will not be present for the budget hearing, neither we will participate in the debate. Thank you very much.
That was Andy Appiah Kubi, a lawmaker from Ghana's ruling National Patriotic Party, NPP. Well, just before we came on air, news emerged that the ruling party members of parliament have called off demands that Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta and his deputy be removed from office until a support package is negotiated with the International Monetary Fund. In a statement, lawmakers said President Akufo-Addo told them that their demands would be acted upon after the upcoming 2023 budget reading and culmination of ongoing IMF support talks. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of Ghana's political divide, there was mounting pressure throughout the week for Finance Minister Ofori-Atta to resign or be sacked. The Deputy National Youth Mobilizer of the main opposition National Democratic Congress, Eden Agbana, Tuesday took a swipe at President Akufo-Addo for praising Ofori-Atta's economic policies instead of sacking him.
I'm not surprised when President Akufo-Addo is satisfied with the performance of Ken Ofori-Atta on two grounds. One, they are related, and so that is his direct cousin. If he sacks him or decides to sack him today, a family meeting will be called and the opinion of the Akufo-Addo family will resolve it. That is one. Secondly, if the leader tells us in the face of this collapsed economy that he's satisfied, it tells you the short-sightedness of the leader himself, because he has failed. As we speak today, the cedi is the worst performing currency in the whole world. A country that is on the brink of collapse, a country that we can declare a state of emergency because they don't have governance. Our economy is being downgraded by every credible rating agency. So President Akufo-Addo is the only one who is satisfied with the performance of Ken Ofori. I'm not surprised. He himself cannot even see that we are in a mess because he has no vision for this country. We don't need President Akufo-Addo to tell us about the performance of Ken Ofori-Atta or the performance of the economy. We feel it in our pockets. We feel it when we get to the filling station and we have to pay 71 Ghana cedis per gallon for diesel. Something we were paying 14 Ghana cedis for in 2016. We feel it when we enter the shops where a small bag of rice that we were buying for 22 Ghana cedis. Today, you need 96 Ghana cedis to be able to buy it. That is the reality that we face. We don't need President Akufo-Addo to tell us how the economy is performing.
Eden Agbana, Deputy National Youth Mobilizer of Ghana's main opposition National Democratic Congress, NDC. The former aide-de-camp, or ADC, of Guinea's ex-military ruler Captain Moussa Dadis Camara told a court in Conakry Monday that it was Camara who planned and ordered the 2009 stadium massacre of more than 150 people. Lieutenant Abubakar Tumba Jakite and Camara are among 11 men standing trial for the massacre on September 28, 2009 in Conakry, when tens of thousands of pro-democracy demonstrators came out to pressure then junta leader Camara not to stand for 2010 election as president of Guinea. Prosecutors said many of the protesters were shot, stabbed, beaten and crushed in a stampede as security forces fired tear gas and charged the stadium, adding that at least a dozen women were raped by security forces. Lieutenant Jakite shot Camara in the head in an assassination attempt later that year and said at the time that he did it because Camara had cast the blame on him for the massacre, a claim he repeated at the court on Monday. In his testimony, Jakite gave details about how the massacre was allegedly planned. He told the court that 250 to 300 new military recruits, some armed with machetes and knives, were brought to Conakry by people close to Camara to infiltrate the demonstration. Jakite alleged that he had tried to convince Camara to let the police and gendarmes handle the situation as it was unfolding, but that Camara was in a rage and gave orders to his men to crush the protesters. Camara previously denied responsibility for the incident, blaming it on errant soldiers, including Jakite. The former coup leader, who has been detained in Conakry, is expected to give his own version of the events when he testifies in the trial. Burkina Faso on Tuesday launched a drive to recruit 50,000 civilian defense volunteers to help the army fight jihadists. In a statement, the Minister of Territorial Administration, Decentralization and Security, Colonel Bukari Zungrana, said the mission of these communal volunteers were to protect, alongside the defense and security forces, the people and property of their communes of origin in the face of jihadist attacks. The volunteers normally receive 14 days of civic and military training before being armed and provided with means of communication. The new recruit drive coincided with a militant attack Monday on an army base in Djibo in northern Burkina Faso, resulting to the killing of at least 10 soldiers, while about 50 more were wounded. In a statement, the army said at least 18 of the attackers were also killed, adding that air reinforcements have been deployed in the area to carry out relief and response operations. Islamist militants, some with links to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, have been waging an insurgency in northern Burkina Faso since 2015. France has called on African countries to show solidarity with Europe in the face of Russia's war in Ukraine. The war has divided the African continent, with nearly half of the countries abstaining or not voting at the United Nations to condemn Russia's annexation of more Ukrainian territory. Speaking in Senegal at the annual high-level Dakar International Forum on Peace and Security Monday, Minister of State at the French Foreign Ministry, Chrysoula Zakharopoulou, described Russia's invasion as an existential threat to the stability and integrity of Europe. She told the forum, hosted by Macky Sall, Senegalese president and current head of the African Union, that Europe expected solidarity from Africa. President Sall countered that Africa was not against Ukraine, urging that no one should get the impression that Africans were insensitive to the situation in Ukraine. According to the Senegalese president, many Africans felt that their own security, economic or health problems were being ignored. This is 2022. This is no longer the colonial era, Sall told the forum, adding that countries, even if they are poor, have equal dignity and their problems must be treated with the same respect. It will be recalled that Senegal in March abstained from a vote in the UN General Assembly condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It, however, voted in favor of a second resolution later that month demanding an immediate end to the war. The U.S. State Department's Undersecretary for Political Affairs said Mali's security situation has become significantly worse due to the ruling junta's choices, including an alleged decision to partner with Wagner, a Russian private security group. Mali's ruling junta, which seized power in 2020, has turned away from its traditional ally, France, and towards Russia in its fight against a decade-long jihadist insurgency. In an online press briefing from Washington Wednesday, following a 4-day visit to the Sahel, U.S. Undersecretary Victoria Nuland said the Malian junta had invited in Wagner Group and that terrorism has gotten significantly worse, claiming that incidents of terror had risen some 30% over the past 6 months. She told journalists that the United States' ability to help Mali on the security side was greatly constrained by the choice that the Mali government made to go into bed with Wagner. The United States, France, and other Western nations have accused the junta of Mali of hiring Wagner, which Malian authorities denied, claiming they are cooperating with Russia's army on a state-to-state level. In neighboring Burkina Faso, Nuland said she met with the interim president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who seized power in a coup last month, and was reassured that the country would not turn to Russian operatives for support in fighting jihadists. Guinea-Bissau's president and current chairman of ECOWAS, Umar Sissoko Embalo, Tuesday met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. In a brief statement, Embalo said he passed on the message of all 15 ECOWAS states to Putin about Russia's war in Ukraine, as well as the issue of wheat and grain. According to media reports from Moscow, President Putin hailed Russia and Guinea-Bissau's long-lasting relations, saying that he hoped to further trade, economic and humanitarian ties with the West African country. The war in Ukraine has impacted Africa, where food prices have soared across the continent as imports of grain and fertilizer have been limited. You are listening to Africa This Week on Home Digital FM with me, Serif BOJANG Jr. A reminder of our top stories. The U.S. State Department authorized the departure of known emergency U.S. government employees and their families from Nigeria, while other Western embassies warned their citizens to limit travel to Nigeria over what they said was an increasing threat of terrorist attacks in Abuja. But Nigeria's security forces called for calm and said all necessary precautions have been taken. As Ghana's economic crisis continues, a majority of ruling party parliamentarians gave ultimatum to President Akufo-Addo to either sack his finance minister and his deputy, or they would boycott all government businesses in parliament. Human rights and civil society groups urged the Gambian government to speed up the implementation of the TRRC recommendations. And in Guinea, a former ADC of ex-military ruler Captain Musa Dadis Camara told the court in Conakry that it was Camara who planned and ordered the 2009 stadium massacre of more than 150 people in the capital. Ahead of the program, a senior Pakistani journalist and TV host living in hiding in Kenya was shot dead Sunday night in what police said was a mistaken identity. And the World Organization Against Torture accused the Chadian authorities of summary executions and torture after 50 people died during clashes in the capital in N'Djamena and south of the country last week. We also have our special guest, one of Africa's most successful and decorated investigative journalists, widely known for naming, shaming, and dealing the bad guys. Stay tuned.
Africa This Week, coming to you from Home Digital 99.9 FM in the heart of Brikama.
Now let's take a look at some of the news that made headlines outside the frontiers of West Africa over the last week. First, South Africa, where the government said it would allow a super yacht owned by a sanctioned Russian oligarch to dock in Cape Town, despite calls from opposition leaders to seize the yacht. The $521 million vessel called the Nord, which belongs to Alexei Morozov, an ally of Russian leader Vladimir Putin, left Hong Kong earlier this week, according to a BBC report. A spokesman for President Cyril Ramaphosa told reporters in Pretoria that South Africa had no legal obligation to abide by sanctions imposed by the US and EU. He said South Africa's obligations with respect to sanctions related only to those that were specifically adopted by the UN, noting that Mr. Morozov was not under any UN-sponsored sanctions. Western countries and their allies have imposed sanctions on more than 1,000 Russian individuals and businesses in response to Russia's war in Ukraine. The South African government has so far avoided directly criticizing Russia, abstaining in several UN votes that have expressly condemned the war. It instead called for a negotiated settlement to end the conflict. Still in South Africa, former President Jacob Zuma Saturday took a swipe at his successor Cyril Ramaphosa, accusing him of corruption and treason. Zuma's criticism was in relation to accusation that Ramaphosa had concealed from the police and tax authorities a 2020 burglary at one of his properties, during which large sums of money were found hidden in furniture. An investigation was launched after a complaint was filed in June by former South African intelligence chief Arthur Fraser. According to Fraser, burglars broke into a farm owned by the president in northeastern part of the country and stole $4 million in cash. Ramaphosa denounced this as political maneuvering, questioned the amount of the theft and claimed that the money came from the sale of his livestock. But in a speech at a function in Sandton, Johannesburg, Zuma, who was forced to resign in 2018 over corruption scandals, said his successor had abused his office and committed corruption and treason.
I often wonder what the situation would have been if I was the one accused of having millions of dollars hidden under my mattress. I'm assuming that what President Ramaphosa has said about the many dollars under his bed or furniture is true, that he conducts private businesses while serving as president of our country. That on its own is unconstitutional, and those who applaud him for doing so commit the most disgusting transgression. Conducted private business while holding the high office of president is nothing but corruption. Your president has committed treason.
Former South African leader Jacob Zuma speaking at a function in Sandton, Johannesburg. Malawi's president Wednesday fired his agriculture minister and deputy in crackdown on fraud. In a televised address to the nation, President Lazarus Chakwera said he fired the two officials for incompetence and gross negligence over their alleged failure to supply Malawi's 3.3 million smallholder farmers with inputs and fertilizers from the Affordable Inputs Program, AIP.
I have relieved the Minister of Agriculture and his deputy of their posts in my cabinet with immediate effect. There are serious problems in the agricultural sector that need to be fixed as a matter of urgency, in the face of which the food security of the country has been left in great jeopardy. Even though there is still time to resolve the problems, there is simply no way this can be done by the same careless leadership that has failed to fulfill its mandate over the sector, a sector that is the backbone of our economy and the bread basket of millions of Malawians. As you will all recall, over 6 months ago, at the very start of the financial year, I publicly instructed officials from the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that all arrangements for the distribution of fertilizer under this year's Affordable Inputs Program were in place no later than September. They have failed to do this, and it is a failure I consider to be completely unacceptable. Additionally, our internal inquiries into the causes of this failure have revealed a disturbing litany of bad decisions that smack of incompetence and gross negligence.
Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera in a televised address to his nation. The World Organization Against Torture, OMCT, on Monday accused the Chadian authorities of summary executions and torture after 50 people died during clashes in the capital N'Djamena and the south. The Geneva-based NGO listed serious human rights violations during protests last week Thursday against a move by Chad military ruler to extend his junta's grip on power for 2 more years. The OMCT and 3 Chadian human rights groups said they have taken up the case with the United Nations Special Rapporteurs or experts appealing for an urgent inquiry. Hundreds of Chadians last week Thursday took to the streets to demand a quicker transition to democratic rule. Military ruler Mohamed Idris Deby has slammed recent protests, referring to it as insurrection with foreign support. Deby, a 38-year-old 5-star general, has been in power since his father, who ruled Chad with an iron fist, was killed in an operation against rebels in April 2021. Dr. Isidore Ngelo is a senior human rights advisor for Africa region at the World Organization Against Torture. On the line from Geneva, he told me what his organization documented in Chad during and after the latest deadly protest.
We have worked with our Chadian partners that have received credible testimonies from family members of people being shot during demonstrations. We've been able to document 80 direct killings during demonstration and after demonstration. This is something also that is not very popularized, but after the day of the demonstrations, police units enter into neighborhoods, search into house of people, gathered them and shoot at them. We had people being detained into classrooms of school in some neighborhoods of the capital, N'Djamena, and being killed. So now we have directly talked with members of families, or we have also seen corpses in hospitals of close to 80 people, but this is underestimated. We know that there are a lot of ongoing exactions in the country, mainly in N'Djamena, the capital, but also in some cities of the south, like Mundu. People are missing in the country, and we don't know where is their whereabouts. We have also documented a lot of people being tortured. I have received dozens of videos of people giving their testimonies of tortures. I've seen horrible images of people being terribly tortured on their body physically. We have also documented people being arrested in prison. We get testimonies of prison being completely full.
And in a televised speech on Monday, the Chadian President Mohamed Idriss Déby referred to these protests as a meticulously prepared insurrection. Those were his words. And he said that the protest was supported by foreign powers to create chaos in Chad. Does that claim hold any water? Is that true?
I think to better understand what is happening in Chad, we have to look at the years back. During the last 4 to 5 years, and very closely during the last 15 months, there have been a consistent excessive use of force, including lethal force against demonstrators. So when you have this in mind, you understand concretely what is happening. So it has nothing to do with a conspiracy. It has to do with a state culture of violence, of a systematic use of live bullets during demonstration, of a systematic use of military during demonstration. So what we have seen today, and but also in the past, is that during demonstration, it's not only police units that are deployed, it's also military, it's also intelligence services. We have testimonies and even pictures of people wearing civilian attires with arms, operating and arresting and shooting at civilians. So this has nothing to do with something conspired by international powers or something else. It has something to do with a cultural approach of repressing peaceful demonstration.
All indications so far are that Déby wants to hang on to power, and the citizens will, of course, continue to exercise their rights in mounting pressure on him to step down. And that means sometimes, again, they will take to the streets. What are your fears and concerns for the safety and security of those citizens, the people of Chad, for the future?
Our fear is that nothing is be done to stop this. That's our main fear.
Dr. Isidore Ngelo is a senior human rights advisor for Africa region at the World Organization Against Torture. A senior Pakistani journalist and TV host living in hiding in Kenya was shot dead on Sunday night in what police said was a mistaken identity. According to local media reports, 50-year-old Ashad Sharif was shot in the head and killed by police after he and his driver allegedly breached a roadblock that had been set up to check on motor vehicles on the Nairobi-Magadi highway. According to police, the officers involved in the shooting were supposed to intercept a car similar to one Sharif and his driver were driving following a carjacking incident in Nairobi where a child was taken hostage. Kenya's Independent Police Oversight authorities said it has launched investigations into the journalist killing. His body was Tuesday repatriated to Pakistan, according to media reports from Kenya. Now time for our special guest segment. Investigative journalism is basically about exposing something that someone somewhere does not want the public to know. But for one globally celebrated Ghanaian investigative journalist, the bar is much higher than that. Anas Arameyo Anas, known for wearing sophisticated face masks for anonymity, is widely known for using his investigative work to name, shame, and jail the bad guys. Outside his circle, a very few people, I must say including me, had seen his face. In disguise, he finds his way into asylums, brothels, and villages where he methodically gathers evidence for hard-hitting stories, then presents the evidence to authorities to see criminals prosecuted. Anas's work on human trafficking won him the U.S. State Department Hero Award in 2008. His investigation of a Ghanaian psychiatric ward led to a widespread awareness of mental health issues in Ghana and the passage of the 2012 Ghana Mental Health Act. His expose of a trafficking ring in a piece called Chinese Sex Mafia led to 3 human traffickers receiving a 41-year jail sentence. While his story titled Spell of the Albino, produced as part of Al Jazeera's Africa Investigate series, led to widespread awareness of a sinister trade in body parts. Enemies of the Nation, another investigative piece of his, which uncovered corruption at Ghana's Tema Harbour, led to the recovery of $200 million in state funds. While in office in 2009, President Barack Obama praised Anas's spirit of courage in risking his life to report the truth.
Actors who resist calls to wield power against the opposition in unfair ways. We see that spirit in courageous journalists like Anas Arameyo Anas, who risked his life to report the truth.
Anas Arameyo Anas is this week's special guest.
I am naturally a very patient person, a person who takes his time to analyze things very, very well before.
Does that make you even a better undercover, patient and taking your time?
I think it's the bedrock of undercover journalism. The ability to wait and think carefully. It's something you've got to have. If you're a trigger-happy reporter, you are likely to report a tip of the iceberg because you are very electrified about what you've seen and you are so happy and you are giggling. In the face of action, in the face of sadness, I keep a very cool disposition, and that's one of my strengths in this field. So when I go undercover, whatever I see, I'm just normal and natural. That is the secret, actually.
What was the first undercover assignment that you embarked on?
I recall somewhere in 2008, 2009, I got a call from a colleague of mine who said that some policemen were taking some money at the checkpoint at the motorway in Ghana. I thought it was fascinating, so I decided to go there and work. I decided to be a hawker, and I was selling peanuts. So in the process, the policemen started charging us money, and I documented all that. Also in that same checkpoint were some drug dealers who usually pass there, and the police had been searching for them for a very long time. So whilst they're selling, I was able to get that evidence also to put together. So this was my very first undercover operation.
Today you are a man of several identities, several disguises, a Catholic priest in Bangkok, a janitor at a brothel, crown prince, a policeman, even a madman, and all those things. When you set out to impersonate or to pretend to be somebody that you are not, something that you are not, all in search of the answers to your questions and your work, take me on a trip of that. How do you do it? Let's talk about especially being a Catholic priest in Bangkok.
I think that And every undercover journalist, that period of putting yourself in character is a very essential period. It's a self-introspection period to look into yourself and to tune your nature inside you to that character. When I get that wrong, I don't go undercover. So I'm not somebody that you come and talk to me this evening, tomorrow you are going undercover as a drug dealer and I will go. No. I speak to myself, my inner self. And my inner self tells me, okay, you are ready for it, so go. I do so because...
What are some of the questions you ask yourself before you go?
Because I don't rush myself. I want to be in proper character. I want to read around. I want to be sure that every question about this particular thing I'm doing, when I'm asked, I can answer. It is only when I've done those physical things that I can now turn back to myself and accept that I'm ready for it.
In your job, you name, shame, and jail people, which is risky, and I guess that also put your personal safety in danger and stuff. Over the past at least 10 years, you've been wearing the face mask, and you have the name, the Faceless Journalist, and other names, bunch of other names. At what stage did you decide to conceal your identity, to use the mask?
Well, I believe when I was evolving and I realized that you cannot put yourself in that realm of walking confidently into another story if those people you have dealt with will know you. So there and then I started to say, well, okay, my identity is out. I'm not going to give it out to anybody. But also that also gets to my very person and my personality. When I set rules for myself, I follow. I'm not that type of person who likes to do a lot of mingling. I'm a very focused person when I pick up something to do. So, strange as it may sound to some people, I'm very cool with that. But I just made that decision that I'm going to make sure that my face is not out there for the bad guys to see so that I can work effectively. And I've not regretted it.
So when do you cover your face and when don't you cover your face?
I cover my face when I'm suspicious of the environment that I'm in. People are likely to take my pictures. Sometimes I don't cover my face. I just walk. But wherever I walk and I don't cover my face, it only means that nobody knows me there. Or nobody's likely to detect that it's me. But if I'm in to mention who I am, then obviously once I'm mentioning who I am, I'm not going to show my face to anybody. I wear my usual mask.
But how about the first day, the first ever day you wore the face mask? How did it feel? How did you feel?
The first time I didn't do it, it felt terrible because a big story had broken and everybody wanted to see who broke that story. And then I was in that conference and people were asking me, where's the guy who did that story? So I left the conference because I was so uncomfortable. Then I came back again.
With the mask?
With the mask.
Because of the successes of your work, some Ghanaians say you have supernatural powers. Do you?
You know, I had a nurse who was testifying to my supernatural powers and I was amazed. In fact, I believed her because the way she put it. People are entitled to their opinion, but I wish I could disappear.
Our special guest and celebrated and daring Ghanaian face mask wearing investigative journalist Anas Rameyo Anas. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of your Week in Review program, Africa This Week, on Home Digital 99.9 FM. I'm your producer and presenter, Sheriff BOJANG Jr. Thanks for your company and see you the same time next week for another edition.
Africa This Week, coming to you from Home Digital 99.9 FM in the heart of Brikama. Africa This Week, coming to you from Home Digital 99.9 FM in the heart of Brikama.
Africa This Week, a new program that features and analyzes all the top news and events that took place across the continent during the week, is coming on Home Digital FM. The 1 hour week in review program will exhibit experts and commentators to look back on the news of the past 7 days and break down stories and issues across Africa that everyone is talking about. Africa This Week will feature guest of the week and engage people at the center of every key news, every story in the best interactive, entertaining and informative way possible. Africa This Week on Home Digital FM 99.9 every Saturday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. starting from next Saturday, October 22nd. Africa This Week with me, BOJANG Jr. See you there.
Home Digital FM 99.9 in Brikama Town. For all the businessmen and women, move out of the darkness, follow the light. Come sell your business with us today. Home Digital FM, let your customers know what you're offering. Be on top of your competitors. Home Digital FM, we will help you stand out. Come advertise with us today for all your businesses. We offer live program coverage both on Facebook Live and on the radio. Text us to sell your products and services. The media is in control. Tell your customers when, where, and how to meet you through Home Digital FM. Don't worry. Do your business. We will sell you out. Call us today on 734-3125 or 200-5770, 620-1413, 766-8394. Home Digital FM. Follow the light.